Welcome to the Create What You Speak podcast.
You are listening to the Create What You Speak podcast, brought to you on webtalkradio.net. My name is Sloan Fremont.
Join me as we have a real-life discussion on how to change your life by changing
really
your thoughts.
Understanding how we can get ourselves to
Remember, question everything, trust yourself, and find your truth.
And my guest this week is Sanita, author of the book, The Doctor Won't See You Now, which I absolutely love that title. Sanita is a renowned specialist in Ayurvedic medicine, an award-winning skincare entrepreneur, and a wellness visionary who has spent 20 years shaping an alternative future for healing and health. She is the founder and CEO of the Tridosha Ayurvedic training and skincare business, and she cuts through the mystique surrounding complementary medicine, advocating for Ayurveda as the world's oldest cohesive approach. At a time when physical and mental health have never been more in the spotlight, her belief is that it's time to heal healthcare and take greater responsibility for our own well-being, and it is a call to action that really needs to be heard. And I totally agree. Sanita, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Sloan, for having me. Delighted to be here.
I've been looking forward to this conversation because, as I mentioned in my email to you, I know a little bit about Ayurveda, but not too much. So I want to start out. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what the catalyst was for writing your book, The Doctor Won't See You Now.
Yeah, sure. So I'm an Ayurvedic practitioner, and I founder director of the Tridosha Training Academy. We predominantly train therapists and also skincare brand. And, I've been practicing bodywork for 17 years. I've been a practitioner for around 8 years. And I think you've probably heard the saying that there's more than one way to skin a cat. And well, that's how I feel about Ayurveda. We're living in times where more mainstream conventional healthcare, that model is very much about assuming that all physiological and pathological issues can be explained in terms such as sort of best practice and case study analysis, and it's a bit doom and gloom. I've got friends who are completely following the Western systems, and they've had an ailment and they've come out and talked to me and they said, I really don't feel I have any hope. And then I come and speak to you, and I speak to my reflexologist, and I speak to my herbalist, and it's such a different message. And so my experience and my own journey has actually shown me that we're resourceful, energetic beings. We can empower every aspect of our health, our well-being, our spiritual life. Mm-hmm. And, so my book is really dealing with the solutions. How can we really understand ourselves from that perspective? And Ayurveda being the solution that I present, it's the oldest health system, and it's a system that I'm trained in. And I guess the core message is that your body is not incapable. You're not born with an innate lacking.
Yes.
Yes. And there's many tools and many techniques and rituals and lifestyle habits that will support you to be experiencing your life, your health, your well-being from the most optimum place possible. That's really my backstory. And but I started off life as a journalist, so I lived that life, burning the candle from both ends and and getting burnt out. And then actually, it was yoga was the first thing I brought into my life, and I was like, wow, how did I not know about this before? And this is way before yoga was where it is now, which is in pretty much every city you go to.
Right.
So the journey.
So interesting in that what you were talking about of having, we're not born lacking, right? We're not born with this broken body that's is in need of repair, right? We have more control over what goes on within us than we maybe have ever been taught. And hopefully people are, especially after the past couple of years, more aware of that and more wanting to seek out alternative ways to manage their health. And maybe let's start two definitions. Can you define Ayurveda for us, what that actually means? And then can you also talk about health and what health means to you?
Can I define Ayurveda? Sorry, just a little bit of a freezer. Yes, so Ayurveda is a Sanskrit word. Aya means life, Veda means knowledge. So it's literally the science of life. And it's a completely 360-degree approach, that gives us all guidelines as to how to live. We all want to live happier, healthier, as long a life as is reasonably possible. And so Ayurveda is a blueprint. There's processes that are wonderfully passed on for us to understand, and also it's very much living with the seasons and living with nature. So I think that's another thing that the gift that we've had from these 2 years that we've all just been through, and with so many of us actually we've got we've started to checking in with ourselves, ask ourselves these questions, right? Considering if we're on the right path, are we doing the right things for ourselves? We've had that time to reflect, and I truly believe the more we speed up and create all these technologies and these ways of living around us, the more we actually move away from what our birthright is, right? Which is living with a state of awareness, with a state of consciousness, and experiencing that pace in our bodies as well. So
and I have recently become more intentional about my mind-body connection, right? Having that, not living so much in my head way out here, right? Really living in my mind and having that body connection. And it seems so simple, right? It seems like, well, yeah, of course you have a mind-body connection because your mind is in your body. Yes, but I feel like for many years of my life, I lived completely disconnected, right? My mind was everywhere else and I was not listening to my body. I was not even wanting to hear what my body had to say, right? And so there was many things happening, right, in when that goes on. But that connection and that almost what you were talking, you're talking about living with the seasons and closer to nature. Like these things, I feel like also are things that we know, but especially here in the U.S., has never been emphasized or taught or value placed on. And so when getting started in doing something like this it feels familiar, yet it feels like foreign at the same time. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. We have the same thing here, Sloan. We're not taught these things in school. Some schools are a little bit further ahead now, and they're making an aim to sort of integrate some of these ideas, but we're not put in touch with ourselves in this way. We live in a social environment where we're expected. We're living from. If I take it just one step back, that we live in a sort of a reality that is very much that sort of talks about success from the place of what your grades are and what that career is going to be, and this blueprint of what your life should look like, and and try and find a life partner and be married by this stage. Yes. And Ayurveda is actually, doesn't talk about any of those things really. It's very much an awakening to experieing life and health from that higher place, and also, really asking ourselves how we're doing, where we're heading, and also having the potential to heal deeply. From within. And it's much more of a movement from, I sort of look at that sort of social dynamic that we still have going on in most of the Western world, right? As it's a very illusionary kind of reality, right? Because that's not the key to happiness. The key to happiness is actually feeling the higher frequencies and love and joy and an opening of awareness, and that's only possible when we're living in our true nature, when we're connected to our true nature, and we're going at the pace that's right for us. And so, and that's not to say that, you don't go out there and have, I don't know, a big family, if that's your thing, or, go out and have a big career. It's not about any of that. It's about, that you are a dynamic being, and that actually when we learn to breathe deeply, when we have a mindfulness practice, when we bring in yoga regularly and really bring it in, when we eat from the seasons, rather than packaged up meals that we bung in a microwave,
right?
We already start to raise our frequency, and we already start to feel better about ourselves. And kind of, I think we have to be careful about the information that we absorb as well, and how that's having an impact. Yeah,
for sure. And I think, and thinking about what you just said about being mindful, having a regular yoga practice, let's say, eating more with what's locally maybe, or what's in season, right? Those things right there, as you're talking about that, like I can instantly feel, I can picture myself doing those things and feel it instantly makes me feel better, because I know doing those things will bring me relief, comfort, whatever it might be. And that approach to health is dramatically different than what we're used to here in the US. I'm sure probably you in the UK. And you talk at the beginning of your book, you talk about the health system and the overhaul that's taking place in the UK. I'm not as familiar with things that are going on there, but I do know in the US, I mean, we're in dire need of an overhaul here with our health system. And personally, I try to avoid going to any sort of quote doctor, right, at this stage of the game, because it's to me in a state of, it's not for the patients at this. I don't think it ever was, but it's more obvious now. So can you share a little bit of maybe some thoughts or examples of what you've seen as kind of the overhaul takes place in the UK, but maybe what you've seen in the US too, as how that has kind of changed, or definitely not for the better.
Yeah, well, our system so far, we have the NHS, which is the National Health Service, and our taxes, a percentage of everybody's taxes go towards paying for the services from the NHS, and that means that anybody, it doesn't matter, what background you're from, has the opportunity to be seen by a medical professional within the Western model. Now, the NHS is aligned with some therapists and practitioners who we kind of still consider alternative. They're not alternative, it's another, like I say, right. it's another armor, isn't it? But Ayurveda is not actually prescribed on the NHS. But we do have, anybody has the opportunity, if you have an ailment or a condition, you can certainly, you'll get seen. And but things are changing, and we know that some of what I won't mention names, but one of our top MPs was actually, prior to Christmas, was actually in America, talking to American companies about investment into our health service. We know that another entrepreneur, very well known global entrepreneur, has also been investing and actually buying up some of the clinics, the NHS clinics, because they are, they're really having tough times financially. Okay. And so, they're obviously looking at alternatives and speaking to these individuals. But I would say, that's not the right approach, because these are business people, and their desire to want to run our clinics and our hospitals comes from a very different energy, to a practitioner managing a hospital or a clinic.
Or the patient who's the recipient.
Yeah, or the patient. And a good example I can give is recently, it came to my attention. There's a lawyer I follow on social media, and he puts excellent content up. And recently he was talking about a story where he's quite infuriated because it was a family dealing with the American healthcare system. So this is where I can see where if we go that route, that isn't what we want to be doing. And at the moment we have universal healthcare for everyone here in the UK, and it's not just something for the elite or the employed. This family, they had a 12-year-old. He'd hurt his arm pretty badly. He went to a clinic. His insurance was accepted for an initial diagnosis, but he had to go back for more. Anyway, in a nutshell, the insurance only covered him up to a certain point, and he hadn't been fully treated. They had to keep calling around other offices. Their insurance was rejected. So this went on and on. It was a half a day's ordeal. This poor little child with a broken arm, but he needed to be seen again. Eventually, I think time was taken off with the parents. They managed to source somebody who would see them, who could access their healthcare insurance. But there'd been such a delay by this point. And the issue that you have is that human dignity gets crushed, this is, what is this about? And at the end of the day, this is ultimately about, profits, the company's profits.
Yeah.
So that would be my concern, is if we go the same route as America. Yeah.
For sure.
That it's not about health and well-being.
No, it's about getting a customer.
And our waiting lists are getting bigger and longer as well. And
it's like about getting a customer, a repeat customer, right? Because once you get somebody on a medication, let's say, then they're going to likely be on that medication for the rest of their life. Then there's so many different angles with that. But one thing that I noticed that people that I know that are on maybe medication for chronic diseases and stuff, the way they identify with what they have, it's always, my disease or my whatever, right? This disease that they have. And it strikes me as, I wonder how their life would change if they stopped associating with it as theirs, if they stopped claiming that disease, right? And they started to do things like we're talking about today, look for alternative treatments and get out of that system that intends to make them a customer for life and doesn't want to show them any other alternatives. It's so, I just want to say that to people, but here that's just not something that most people would even understand or grasp, because most people are just, well, my doctor said, right? They're so used to being a part of the system. I mean, that's how it is since we've grown up, right? That's just how it is. And one other thing that is a little different that I see happening here in where I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and the popularity of what's called direct primary care physicians has been coming up here more. And this is where you don't go through your insurance. You're just paying the doctor directly. That is a newer thing that I've seen. It may have been around. Maybe I just didn't notice it, but that's telling me also that people are tired of the system and they're looking for alternatives. And the one doctor that I spoke to said her practice had grown 3 times. So the demand is there, which I think is also a good sign. Yeah, I would agree with that. We're seeing that here as well. So one of the things, when I researched the chapter in my book on the NHS, I really drummed down on actually how much of our wages, what percentage goes towards the NHS. I really wasn't even aware of the figure, and it's a substantial amount. Now, somebody like me, I haven't been to the doctor in 20 years. I never go. So absolutely, it's a collective force, the NHS. It's for everyone, and I'm happy to pay my taxes. But also, I'm not taking any of those services. Right. And not to say that that won't be the case in the future. But also, one of the things I thought about was, if we are taking responsibility for our own, how we spend that income, would we go that route, or would we go and see a naturopath or an Ayurvedic practitioner, or, how we are so conditioned that this is the only way, this is the only system. Only solution. Yes. Only solution that's going to fix us. And I think, obviously, Western medicine, we've had lots of advances with all sorts of operations and, the things that we can do now. Western medicine is brilliant, in that sense. But most of the people that go to see the doctor, it's the first level tier. Yeah. It's first level tier
which I absolutely do believe can be resolved with, holistic health. And, if somebody goes in with, with heart disease or diabetes, immediately they're put on medication. And actually, diabetes can be reversed, through diet and lifestyle. And, and a number of other, basically, preventative measures.
Right.
But this isn't the education we receive.
Right.
This isn't, it's not even, it's only on the table if you start to go looking for it, or maybe someone in your family or a friend starts talking about it. And, you can see that it's like the light bulb switched on, and they're like, wow, and then we start to consider that actually we're so much more than actually just our body and a mind as well. We also, our spiritual life is deeply affected by our health.
Yes.
And, and this is really where, if we are experiencing certain health conditions really at that very deep level, it may be that there are some blockages, and that also needs support and healing. But you'd never have that conversation in a traditional practice.
No. And you barely, if you would go to a quote regular doctor, you would barely get time with them to tell them why you were even there to begin with, right? Because the nature of is get them in and get them out. And so let's go back a little bit. So I'm going to sum this up just for, and again, the goal with this conversation is to present this information for the listeners, give them other alternatives to investigate and consider, think about, look up for what might be right in their lives. So I'm going to sum this up just at a simple level. I know it's much more than this, but could we say that Ayurveda is really about, I guess, maybe a holistic approach, right? It integrates mind, body, and spirit, right? It takes lifestyle into consideration. There's many other things. And I know here in the US, as I had told you when I emailed you about coming on the show, that this is something I had heard about, but I didn't know that much about. And I also didn't know if what I was hearing about in the US was real. Was it the actual thing, or had it just become like westernized, right? Like, yoga to me, I feel like has been hijacked, right? It's become this like extreme sport where I used to be in these classes and, you would hold the pose for like 1 second and then you'd move and I'm like, what is this even doing? Like, I'm not even stretching, this is like more prone to injury than having any sort of relief here. So can you talk a little bit maybe about some misconceptions about Ayurveda, especially maybe in the US, if you're aware of that, but like what would you really want people to know about when it comes to?
Well, Ayurveda, I look at it as it's like a philosophy, actually. It's a way of being.
Yeah.
It's a way of being. It's so much more than taking a herb, having Ayurvedic massage. That's all great. These are all amazing tools, to have, having a regular meditation practice, doing your yoga class, going for a cleanse once a year. These are all the tools. This is the toolkit. This is part of it. But actually, it's a way of life. It's a way of being. And this, this provides us with a system of tools and processes that make day-to-day living holistic. Enriched and vibrant and practical, because we have a connection to source. We have a connection to nature. We have much more connection to ourselves. Nature isn't just around us. Nature is within us. All of the elements exist within us. So it also helps us understand that why we are different. It's not one size fits all. So I think that's another huge comparison with Western medicine, which puts everybody into basically, we're in a box and
same category, which we saw in 2020, right?
Yeah, exactly. And everything that develops within us individually because of our own personal experiences,
and our interpretation and how we've integrated it.
And our interpretation, our constitution, so in that sense, it's very sensitive. It's it's a very nurturing health system, but it also extends far beyond us as the individual, because we're reaching out into both living and non-living, that everything is joined together, that how we experience our health is an impact of our environment. It's an impact of the conversations that we're having. It's an impact of the things that we're saying ourselves. It's an impact of, yes, our lifestyle, but that actually everything is joined up. It is a medicine, it is a medicine. It's the oldest medicine. What it's not is alternatives. This is what, this is what gets me. It's always put into that category. Oh, the alternative, the alternative system. It's the source of all healing practices. It's the source of yoga. It's the source of meditation.
Yeah.
And it's a spontaneous expression of the natural law. And,
oh my gosh, I love that.
It's commonly associated, in the West, definitely in England, you'll see it. We're in lots of spas.
Yes, that's where I see it here.
Massages, Indian food, Indian herbs, and this is all wonderful. This is the creative aspects of it. And I think that goes back to also what you said about yoga, how yoga's kind of been,
hijacked. Yeah. I don't even go here anymore because of that. I feel like I'll do it on my own, not because I don't want to be around people, but because this isn't yoga to me to do it in this way. Right. Yeah. And I really love how you said that it's the Ayurveda is the source of all of these things, right? Because when we go get a massage, or we go to a yoga class, or we sit in meditation, right? Yes, we're doing those things, but it carries through every other part of our life too, throughout our day too, right? In the foods that we eat, in the thoughts that we think, in the conversations, what we're consuming, both, audio and visual, right? If we're constantly, everybody knows this by now, but if we're constantly listening to negative things, we're going to feel that inside us. And I love the reminder that I think you said it's a way of life, right? It's a practice. It's a way of being. And that summary is such a simple way to think about it. And it also doesn't overcomplicate it, I think, too. It feels very doable.
Yeah, it's very doable. It's very simple. It's, easily doable. None of these things are complicated when you, when you really break it. You have to either, at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, how do I want to experience my life? Yeah. Do I want to experience more life with more peace? More love, more joy, feeling connected, feeling in harmony? Or do I want to, keep, going through life feeling fear and anxiety and tension? It doesn't matter. You keep shopping, you can keep going on holidays, you can, get yourself the latest Tesla, whatever it is, whatever your thing is. But, at the end of the day, if you're not, addressing your inner well-being, which is ultimately what we're really talking about, then really things are not going to change. You can take all the tablets in the world.
Yeah. And you're going to be constantly in that.
You never address the root cause. Yeah. It's just like putting a plaster over it.
Yeah. It's like the constant seeking, right? We're constantly seeking. And there's a metaphor, a story about the hungry ghost, right? The hungry ghost, but it only has like a small mouth, right? So it's constantly hungry because it can't get in anything. And that's what this reminds me of, is that constant seeking.
Constant seeking.
Yeah. So can you share some examples of things maybe that we can incorporate into our daily routines to get to maybe let's think about it from getting started? Because I know we mentioned some things, meditation, massage, things like that, but maybe some things for getting started, or things that for someone that's completely new to this, but is definitely interested and just wants to get started. What would you offer?
Yeah. So the first thing is if somebody was coming to me, and I was doing an overhaul for them, the first thing we look at is nutrition. What are you eating? Yeah. The first thing that you can do is actually take time to eat properly. Yeah. Have a routine. So you don't want to be, skipping. But you also, your body wants a routine. Your body wants to know, your soul wants to know where it's at. If you keep being funky and you're this and you're that, and it all just starts to get a little bit confused. So food is really the first thing. And that's really an easy thing to resolve. If you're not cooking, then start cooking. You need to be eating good quality ingredients. You certainly don't want to be buying packaged meals and popping them in microwave, which so many people think are healthy, because it's all packaged up so beautifully now.
And it's labeled as healthy, right? Like a healthy choice. Like, no.
No, it's dead. It's not even got any prana in it, no life force, you know. Get yourself a potato and a few herbs, you know, grow some herbs. And so this is really the first step, is think about what are you feeding your body with, you know. That's really the first, and it's a great place to start. And you know, once you've got that healthy eating and keeping it simple recipes as well. I mean, I've got a few recipes in my book, but it's certainly not a recipe book. You know, there are some really good, you know, and you don't have to have an Ayurvedic recipe book, just a recipe book that shows you how to cook and make, you know, home cooked food, and easy recipes. You know, have 10, 12 recipes that you can, you know, circulate that you love and really don't take you very long to cook, but know where your ingredients come from. So that's the other thing, is it's good because really our body wants to live with the seasons. So have a look at what's growing in season, because that means it's available, you know, and it's not been shipped in from, you know, a million miles away and, you know, popped in a freezer and lost its juices along the way. So, and then you can move into, you know, the other more sort of, you know, cultivating the more spiritual practices. You know, it's always going to be good to have, you know, a 10-minute, at least a minimum 10-minute meditation practice in the morning. It's such an easy thing to do, just like brushing your teeth. But it sets you up for the day. Again, you know, as you were saying, Sloan, if you've got having a bit of a stressful week, or you know, or you're somebody who suffers from stress or anxiety, then actually it just creates that space in the body, you know, before you start the day. Your body's actually, nervous system is able to be recharged, and it gives you just more clarity, you know, more clarity. If you want something more physical, yoga is good. You know, you don't have to go to a class. There's so much online now, so much accessibility. It's absolutely incredible. And then also, I mean, something else that's very good, it's becoming a lot more common knowledge, is journaling. Because we're carrying so much more in the sense of, because the way we live our lives is so much more speedier than they would have been, you know, 20 years ago. But actually journaling just helps you kind of get all that noise out of your head and pop it down. You know, and it helps you recharge your energy. It helps you recharge your energy. You don't have to do it every day. But it fills your heart and your soul up as well, you know, when you journal. So
I agree. And I found when I'm having
the foundation, really, that's kind of the foundation.
And I found with journaling that when I'm really spinning on something, right, and it just keeps churning in my mind, just getting it out on paper often helps stop that mental churning that just doesn't want to go away, because it forces you, you're focused, you're writing, it forces you to think about what you're writing, and it gives yourself a break while you're writing it. But then it's like, okay, it's out there. I don't have to keep spinning on it. And I find relief in that.
Yeah. And I think many people can and will. And again, it's not something that's dished out from the GP or the doctor. But
of course not. No,
but it has really good results.
Well, and so, really, and I love these foundational, these foundational principles that you gave us, and starting with food, because we all eat, we all have to eat, right? And even if you're starting with maybe looking at changing out one meal a day, right, and gradually working up to it, you know, that whatever starts your process for you. And another question I wanted to ask you, because I know even for myself, there's been times where I've tried to incorporate changes like this and I failed, or I've done it, I felt like it was too much, or whatever my excuse was. And then it can be difficult to get that confidence back to start trying again. What advice would you offer to anyone listening who's maybe experienced that, and how they can do things a little differently?
If you're finding it difficult, the first thing I would say is consider why you're finding it hard, because what are the obstacles? What's actually stopping you? Is it time? Is it lack of resources? Is it that you're just so used to living your life in a certain way, and actually, you know, your mindset, bringing in any change is difficult for you? Because change can evoke panic and fear and, you know,
and resistance.
Resistance. If you, for 20 years, you've been eating a certain way, you've, you know, been going into your, and you know, and your fridge has been filled up with, you know, easy to pop in the oven or microwave meals. And then now to think, a lot of people are saying, actually, I don't know how to cook. That's something I hear a lot now. And so I think those limitations, once you've answered that question, those limitations will dissolve. They will dissolve, because you just get that moment where you're like, oh yeah, okay, this is just a new thing to learn. This is cool.
It's a new thing. And when you've addressed the limitation, then you know what it is and you can make the adjustment, right? If it's time, then maybe you need to set some time on your calendar. Or if it's, I don't know how to cook, well, getting a cookbook, or even asking someone to teach you, right? There's looking online, right? So many videos, there's so many different ways, but the awareness, I think, is key there, what you mentioned.
The awareness, I mean, all recipes are online now. You just Google. I mean, if you look in your cupboard and you've got a little bit of pasta and a tuna tin and an onion, go online. There's a recipe for it. It's not brain surgery. This is stuff that this is easily do yourself. And also, I think it's also important to understand that you're accountable for your own health at the end of the day. If you choose to eat 2 kebabs a day and half a bottle of wine, that is going to have an impact on your health over time. You might not see it straight away, but eventually it will. And so good eating habits they're a companion for life. And also I think the other thing is it shouldn't feel like a chore. If that's what it feels like, then exactly as you said, Sloan, you just drip. Try at least one meal first a week, and then just work your way up. The other really good thing to do is batch cooking. You can cook a couple of different dishes and batch cook, and then you don't have to be thinking about that time and that preparation every week. And that's fine, because it's healthy food, where the ingredients have come from. And you
create it. And I love what you just mentioned about the control we have over our health too. We have so much more control than maybe we ever want to admit sometimes, because it's easier to make excuses or tell ourselves why we can't do these things. But ultimately, especially as it relates to food, we have control over this. We can make choices, we can make decisions. And if you start there, and I asked the question about building confidence too. I think if you start there in one area, your confidence in being able to do this will increase, and you'll see that ripple out into other areas, right? Because you're not going to want to, let's say, eat healthy food and then go, never exercise or drink a bunch of alcohol, or you know what I mean? There's going to be it has a ripple effect. It definitely has a ripple effect. And and that's not to say you don't like to go out and let your hair down and have a glass of wine or prosecco or whatever it is, but it's just that you become more alert with your thoughts, and actually what you're doing and your habits, and also you become more interested in ingredients. I've seen so many of my own students and clients who after some time have then said, actually, I kind of like to grow some of my own herbs. What do you recommend? And so there's a connection that's made. Right. That at that point, then they realize this isn't difficult. Right. I get some seeds and I put them, and I plant them, and and I wait for the joy. So right. I love that. Yeah. I love that. My guest this week has been Sanita Passy, author of the book, The Doctor Won't See You Now. Sanita, this has been a great conversation. I could talk to you for hours because I love this topic, and I love, just love your energy too. You're very upbeat, very happy, smiling through everybody. I just love it. As we wrap up the show today, is there one thing you want to leave the listeners with, maybe to know about you, your book, or Ayurveda in general?
Yes. So, book, it's available on Amazon in the USA. So The Doctor Won't See You Now, Staying Healthy While the Medical System is Rebooted. Do sign up for our newsletter, because we put lots of free content on there, and that's the Try Dosha newsletter. So try-dosha.co.uk. I also put lots of content on my own Instagram and Facebook, Sanita Passy. And what I'd like to do is invite your audience to a free educational webinar. So I'm actually holding a 2-hour webinar on next Thursday, the 24th, called Recreating Health Habits. And what I'll do is I'll send you the link, and they can all register for free. Yeah, and that will give them lots more information, a bit more of a deeper dive into the stuff that we've talked about today.
Awesome. And I'll put all the links in the show notes, so it'll be easy for them to find.
Right.
Sanita, thank you again for joining us this week. It's been amazing to talk to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Create What You Speak podcast, brought to you on webtalkradio.net. You can also hear the podcast on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, and your favorite podcasting platform. I'm Sloan Fremont, and I hope you'll join me for the next episode of the Create What You Speak podcast. Thank you for listening.